Hey Ingrid, thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I'm excited for our seventh writers' room meeting that we've decided to transform into a Christmas-ish episode. So that's going to be a nice vibe.
Of course, it's certainly uh, topical, I guess. Uh, so let's get right into it.
Yeah. So I have rewatched some Christmas episodes from the original show in the past week, and I believe you have as well. So I was wondering
Yes, I
if
have.
maybe we would just start off with talking about what that experience is like, because we've been very, ironically, for a writer's room based on the Vampire Diaries, we've been very opposed to rewatching this show so far.
Yes.
So what was it like for you to go back and rewatch a bunch of random episodes from throughout the seasons?
Oh my God. For this show, for like our writers' room, I rewatched the first season and these episodes, these four Christmas episodes, and it was a bit difficult to try to remember what was going on because the way that the Vampire Diaries constantly like raises the stakes
Mm-hmm.
every season. They introduce new concepts that it's difficult for me to remember. So like by the last half of the second half of the show, where you get things like sirens and travelers
Mm.
and heretics and
Yeah.
all of these things that I had to remember what they were, and like a magic sword and things like that. So that was a bit hard.
Yeah. I think what I have written down is that the pace of plot development, I think when you're watching it, it's very compelling because everything feels like the most important thing that's ever happened. I assume that some
Mm-hmm.
people, when they first watched it, got tired after a while, but I didn't personally. And so coming back to watch it and being a little bit lost until I remember, like, and piece together what happened at certain points was really, it was kind of funny to have, I don't know, semi outsider perspective on what it's like because I'm sure that I probably got people to watch the Vampire Diaries way back when by like plonking them in the middle of where I was up to. So this was a nice
Mm-hmm.
like payback
You
on
got to put
myself of
yourself in their shoes.
like what the fuck is happening? I completely forgot, for example, that there was ever a spell on Mystic Falls that meant they couldn't do magic in there. Like I even think that we've discussed this at some point in the show, the driving of a vampire over the line or
Yeah,
something like that.
across the
Or
anti-magic
yeah,
border. Uh-huh.
but I could like had forgotten that it would be on the show on the show. So it was like I was really lost when Kai started like absorbing something. I was like really confused in that
Mm-hmm.
one. But yeah. So I think that we might just do a general overview and thoughts summary of each of the four episodes. So there's one in season 4. They skipped season 5 and then they did 6, 7, 8, which is interesting. I think does season 1 to 3 all happen in the same year?
I don't know. We should probably check, but that is interesting that they didn't have a Christmas episode for the first three seasons, but then they did
Mm.
for most of the seasons after.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I had a look at like I compared what episode in the season each of the Christmas episodes came at, and because I think that the Vampire Diaries premiered at around the same time every year, which means it makes sense that the Christmas episodes are around the same. So it's like one of them I think is the 7th episode, and two of them are the 9th, and one of them's the 10th. So it's like obviously became like after they hit season 4, they skipped season 5, but like for 6, 7, and 8, it became like a thing that they
Mm-hmm.
did every year and that they planned ahead of time, which is wild because like I would be so anxious as the as the writer in the room trying to decide what happens in the Christmas episode, because what if something happens and it doesn't air at the right time anymore? I mean, I guess you just don't have control over it at that point, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
yeah.
must have been a bit nerve wracking, I guess. But I don't know many things that could have happened that would have thrown off the show so much.
Mm, yeah.
Well,
Like a
lots of things
pandemic
could
or
happen, but
something.
yeah, that we weren't thinking about that. That
Yeah.
was oh, good times.
Moment of silence for every planned series like ending that was fucked up by COVID,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
like how much the writers room would have just spun out on all of those shows, not sure how to fix
Hmm.
it. Okay, so the first one, I like did not emotionally prepare myself for the fact that Michaelsons would be a part of my life this week. So,
Mhm.
so it's the season in episode four, the episode in season four, uh, was a bit of a shock. So the summary, just to catch everybody up on what's happening in this particular episode, is as a winter wonderland themed party fills the streets of Mystic Falls, Stefan and Caroline find themselves at odds with Tyler over his plans for Klaus and his hybrids. When Caroline proposes a solution to their problem, Haley finds a dramatic way to make it clear that she is not on board. Later, Klaus makes a discovery that leads to chaos and violence. Meanwhile, Elena and Damon retreat to the Gilbert Lake house to help Jeremy conquer some dangerous inner demons with the help of Bonnie and Professor Shane, who reveals a piece of ancient history that leaves them all speechless. So, how did you feel as you kind of processed the amount of story in that episode, Ingrid?
So, yeah. First of all, I think that the theme of Winter Wonderland wasn't as prevalent as it should have been. I don't know.
Mm.
It felt like there was a party and Klaus painted a snowflake, but there wasn't more to it than that. There wasn't like decoration and costumes
And he
and pretty
insisted that it
dresses or
wasn't.
anything like
He
that.
insisted that it wasn't a snowflake. Like he was trying to say, "Oh,
Exactly. It was
it's abstract."
postmodern. Yes. So that was my first issue with that episode. But yeah, there was a lot. I had to remember who Professor Shane was. Um, I had to remember the thing about like activating Jeremy's hunter
Mm.
gene or whatever, which we've already talked about how much I hate the idea that Jeremy being a hunter is innate. It's hereditary, whatever.
He just needs to kill Elena.
Yes, exactly. So I was reminded of that and it made me mad. What else happened in that episode? Um,
Sire Bond
right.
stuff.
Yes, Sire Bond stuff. I had forgotten that it happened relatively early in the show that
Mm.
Elena became a vampire and was sired to Damon. So, like from
Mm.
my memory, it happened a bit later. So Elena didn't spend much time human on the
Mm.
show, which is interesting. Other than that, nothing really, nothing really jumped out to me except the fact that was it in this episode? I think it was in this episode where the Christmas songs only played when Klaus was killing someone.
Yeah,
So
I noticed that too.
so
He
he
like
killed the hybrids to the tune of "Oh Holy Night," and then he killed Tyler's mom to the tune of another
have
song, and I
yourself a
don't
merry
remember
little
what.
Christmas. Yeah, have yourself a merry little
Exactly.
Christmas. And
So
it was like a really moody cover of it too. Like it was very atmospheric. I think it's really funny that their first ever Christmas episode, they only. I mean, I guess I'm not going to sit here and rewatch it or work through the scenes or anything to double check this because like, what am I, a professional? But I expect that they had like some kind of like sleigh bells sound effect, kind of like random music maybe playing, like if anybody was at the like winter wonderland party or something like that. But
mhm.
like in terms of I believe that would be referred to as, I'm just pulling it, the one unit of TV and media, like screen media studies that I did at uni. I think that's like
Mhm.
diegetic sound is what that's called. Like it comes from the actual what's actually happening. So
Right,
like dialogue
exactly.
and music that's playing there where they are, whereas like non-diegetic sound, like the actual songs that they've put over the footage to be atmospheric and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Uh,
So yeah,
was yeah.
all the other scenes had like normal Vampire Diaries soundtrack, like alternative,
Mm,
slow, moody music. But specifically, when Klaus was killing people, it was Christmas songs. And I found that very interesting and very funny.
that is really funny. I, I I really was not prepared to like watch him, I guess. Like I should have known ahead of time that I was watching the Vampire Diaries and I would be like obviously seeing characters from that show, but like just him and Haley in the same episode is really, really funny. Coming from somebody who's like watched the originals probably more than
Mm-hmm.
I've watched the Vampire Diaries. Like we are getting so close to the conception of the witch antichrist. like like they're like you can just see like the paths about to collide, and it's just really funny
Mm-hmm.
that the result of that is still around fucking stuff up to this day on network television. Uh, and is currently their daughter is currently killing swathes of people to epic soundtracks as well. So
Good for her.
Yep, good for her. Girl boss.
Girl boss moment.
Yeah, I felt I just felt really kind of flawed by the amount of stuff that happened in the episode. I guess because my most recent experiences with the Vampire Diaries have just been us talking about it, and in that case, it's obviously a very slow. Like everything happens very slowly because nothing's happening at all. We're just talking about it. Like we're just sitting here hanging out, but it's just so hectic. Like unbelievable.
Yeah,
Mm.
definitely. It would be really hard to follow if someone were like just dropped
Yeah.
into the show, or even started to pick it up like at the beginning of a season,
Mm.
because they introduce so many concepts, and those concepts sometimes reappear, and like characters reappear and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
how did people watch the show when it aired?
Yeah.
God.
I think it's weird because I maybe part of the problem is that legacies that I watch currently, like stuff still happens probably even at a similar pace, but because it's monster of the week format for the most part, the episodes really are complete unto themselves. There isn't necessarily, there's still cliffhangers and classic Vampire Diaries hijinks, but um it all doesn't shift as quickly because people are enemies and then they're friends and then they're enemies and then they're friends on the Vampire Diaries. Like we do make fun of the continuity errors a lot, but props to
Mhm.
the original writing room for managing to keep track of all that shit because I'm like sitting there watching it without the full context of watching up to it recently, and it's wild. Did you have anything else you wanted to chat about in terms of the season 4 episode?
No, I think for the season 4 episode, that was about it.
Okay, so we skipped season 5 because Christmas didn't happen that year. And on season 6, the episode is called Christmas Through Your Eyes. This one was so upsetting. It was so upsetting for me. Okay,
Mhm.
the summary on the wiki is: with the holidays approaching, Bonnie attempts to replicate her favorite traditions while reminiscing about happier times with her friends. Not able to return home to Mystic Falls for her favorite time of the year, Caroline is surprised when Sheriff Forbes brings the holidays to her at Whitmore College. Meanwhile, after discovering that Joe has gone missing, Alaric turns to Damon and Elena for help in trying to find, I assume, her, while Liv and Luke find themselves at odds when Tyler approaches them with a rescue plan. Elsewhere, Jeremy helps Matt carry out a plan to take down Enzo, but grows concerned when Matt takes things too far. Lastly, Stefan is forced to break some devastating news to Caroline. How did you do with this episode, Ingrid?
Oh wow, yeah, this one was kind of emotional for me because
Mm.
for personal reasons, a lot of it hit home.
Yep.
But um, it was really sad to see Bonnie all by herself, and recreating the Christmas traditions and having the flashbacks
Mm.
to the time where they were all together for Christmas. And I think this one felt the most like Christmassy. I guess Christmas
Mm.
was a major part of it, like the emotional weight of Christmas with all the
Mm.
characters. Because we had like Caroline and her mom, and Bonnie by herself, and Elena missing Bonnie, and things like that. So um, that was interesting, and the whole situation with Sheriff Forbes was yeah was pretty
Yeah,
rough.
it was pretty rough. I did notice that. I suspect this comes in part from the fact that thematically Christmas episodes focus on families, and in the Vampire Diaries, I feel like the mothers have more of a presence than the fathers often, um,
Mm-hmm.
like in general. But I noticed that all three of the first Christmas episodes include like some kind of mother in peril. Like there's Carol in season 4, and there's Liz Forbes in season 6, and then there's in season 7. Well, we'll get to that obviously, but in season 7, Lily Salvatore has just died, which is not the same because she was
Mm-hmm.
she was quite awful as a human being, but um, it's just like they just did it several times, and it was like pretty upsetting all the times and very obvious, I guess, watching it all back.
I didn't notice the thing about the mothers, but yeah, in all
Mm.
3 episodes, someone's mom is in some distress. But
Mm.
yeah, that's really weird now that you say it. Mhm.
Yeah. Do they like? Is it? I assume it's just a coincidence. It comes from the fact that Christmas is family focused, and if they want to make it like make it a hard thing, cause a problem, make it emotionally resonant. They put a family member in peril, but it's always mothers. Um, yeah, it was also I was also not prepared to see Kai like
Yeah.
at all.
Uh-huh.
What? How do you feel about Kai, Ingrid? Actually don't think we've ever discussed Kai at length.
I don't like him. I
As
I
a person
don't
or as
like
a
him
villain?
as a person and as a villain. I don't think
Mm.
he's compelling. I just think that he's very, I don't know, he's more irritating than compelling. He's threatening, which is, but like if you compare it to any of the original vampires, he doesn't have that same presence, that same gravitas. So when it came to him watching that season, I just kind of waited for it to be over. Like I wasn't excited, or I didn't feel, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. I didn't feel compelled to
Haha.
follow
Compelled.
his part of, yeah, haha. I didn't feel compelled to follow his trajectory on the show the way that I did
Mm.
with like the original vampires.
Yeah, I feel like with Kai, because they had a gap of a season long between when the originals departed on episode 420 and when Kai kind of appeared in the beginning of season 6. I feel like Kai was very much an attempt at tapping back into that moment, that kind of atmosphere from Klaus. Like he's a little pseudo Klaus, which is potentially not 100% fair to his character, but I do also feel like he fully encapsulates everything that I hate about the way the Vampire Diaries writes mental illness and empathy and like humanity. Basically, Kai is just like the prime example of what I loathe about that. So yeah, I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
fan.
Yeah, they do keep repeating that he's like a psychopath, a sociopath, and I guess his the reason why he's like that is because he lacks the ability to empathize, and that's a horrible. Like, it's something that is repeated in many TV shows and a lot of media, but it's still so egregious in this one specifically in Kai. And
Mm,
unlike the original vampires, he doesn't really have any redeeming qualities or any interesting aspects of his character to sort of offset that. So
mm.
we're just left with like the worst parts of Klaus and none of the charming parts. So I think that
Yeah.
it was pretty a failed attempt on their part.
Yeah, exactly. And I even after the merge that he does with Luke, he like takes on like we're just shit talking Kai now. Like this isn't Christmas anymore. But well, if this is how I want to spend my Christmas, is shit
Yes.
talking Kai. Um, he after the merge with Luke, he gets emotions. Like that's how that's written. He becomes emotional because he killed Luke in the merge,
Mm-hmm.
and that is so like there's so much to unpack there, but let's just throw away the whole suitcase. Like that's
Yeah.
fucked up. Um, yeah, and I also seeing Luke was like, oh, another gay. I forgot that they buried. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was just so there were just so many of them, and then got to see Nora and Mary Louise in the season after this one. So what I found was cool about this one, what I did like about it, was Damon versus Rick, because I think that I win no matter who wins in that situation
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
one of them has lost. And
Yeah.
Bonnie's isolation, I feel like it wasn't fully about her. Everybody is sad about it, but she was kind of like a montage interspersed throughout, and I feel like there is something to be said for the fact that she is so isolated from everyone because she sacrificed herself for Damon, and it really, so much of this episode kind of pulled in things that I dislike about the show, but also did it in a way that like I was very emotional about. So I'm sitting there like, did they maybe do a good job when they did this? Like, because I'm very invested and upset. But yeah, it was just a weird kind of mess of stuff to process.
Yeah, if their goal was to make us emotional and upset, I think they succeeded. But I think that you're right that we didn't really get to see much of like Bonnie's thought process and
Mm.
her being isolated and being alone. We just saw people missing her and people being sad that she was gone. And
Mm.
she found a way to cope with that, but it was just like very, very short bits throughout the episode. Whereas
Mm.
everyone else had to like could give whole speeches about how much they missed her and oh my God, Bonnie, we love her so much, and yet the show doesn't seem to love her as much because it just doesn't dedicate enough time for her.
We need a like new modified Bechdel test, which is how many times does Bonnie get to just talk about herself and not anybody else?
Yeah.
Because it's not very often. Uh, I think that I believe, and I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that this in the episode or episodes following this one are the ones where Bonnie ends up like pretty much suicidal in the prison world and like tries to kill herself, and then Jeremy visits her somehow, like astral projection or something like that, and like somehow gives her hope. I don't know that she actually is able to talk to anyone or knows that they've been there. I don't know. It was like kind of weird, but like they somehow helped her out, and then she got out and into the other prison or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, I think that they were going for building up to that point, but it was still like, I don't know that this is about Bonnie when I'm watching this. So, yeah. So, season 7's Christmas episode.
No, wait, I have one more thing to mention about this
Please,
one.
please.
It's
Go
because
ahead.
I can't, for the life of me, remember why Enzo and Matt were mad at Stefan, but they were both mad at Stefan in this season. I remember that very, very vividly, and it was this was the episode that I had the most memory of because I remember rewatching it a lot because I just think that Enzo and Matt are just so funny when they interact. So there's in a previous episode there's a scene where they have lunch together and they're both threatening each other, but they're also eating a meal together, and I think that's the most wonderful thing. So that was the high point of this episode for me.
Yeah, I do think Enzo is one of the high points of the later seasons because he has a strong personality. He has a cemented history with Damon. He brings an interesting dimension to our understanding of Damon, and then he has these really interesting interactions with other characters like Matt and Bonnie and stuff like that. Like it's interesting, and I enjoy him as a character. I'm trying to remember the answer to your question or your confusion, but I'm pretty sure that the situation where Matt kills his fiance and thinks it was Stefan's fault doesn't happen until season 7 because that's
Right.
when there's
Yeah. No,
flash
that hasn't
forwards and
happened yet.
flashbacks.
Yeah,
So
that hasn't happened yet.
why is Matt mad at Stefan?
I think it's just him being mad at vampires in general, and that kind of he focused on Stefan. I think because Stefan has this like air of that he's a good person, and he tries to convey that. And I know with Enzo, he felt a little bit of that because like he thought that Stefan was hypocritical, but like I don't get why he would be mad at Stefan and not at Damon.
I think in season 6, Matt at the beginning, Matt had joined that neighborhood watch group.
Yes, with Tripp and all that shit.
I think something happened with them because I think Tripp is dead by this point in the season.
Yes,
so maybe it's something related to that.
But it's Enzo that kills Tripp. But I think it might be because of Stefan. I don't remember, but it's
yeah. It was just so complicated.
It's just
all the time. Also, Stefan's girlfriend Ivy was involved in some way because I think she was killed by Tripp driving her over the town line the way that Matt tried to kill Enzo. So maybe that had something to do with it. But
okay,
yeah, okay. It's just nice to stop in every Christmas episode and see why Matt is mad at Damon now and stuff like that. And so it was weird for this one to have it be Stefan. Okay, so for season 7, the Christmas episode is called Cold as Ice. And the summary on the wiki is, with the holidays in full swing, a search for Julian leads Damon and Stefan to a small town outside of Mystic Falls. While managing a holiday toy drive at Whitmore College, Bonnie seeks help from Nora and the two strike up an unlikely friendship. Elsewhere, Caroline does her best to navigate her new life as a pregnant vampire, while Alaric grows concerned that the pregnancy is affecting her more than she's letting on. Finally, after finding himself at odds with Damon, Stefan is forced to take matters into his own hands, setting off a tragic chain of events that leaves their lives changed forever. So, pretty intense.
That friendship between Nora and Bonnie, like they said that as if that was going to be something. The summary, as if that was something that was going to build up over several episodes, but that like starts and ends.
Yes.
In that episode, it lasts for so little time. But what did you think of this episode?
My main note that I have is the bar full of dead Santas because I thought that was funny.
That's my main note too. I thought that was like
Twist.
that was peak Christmas. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
just a bar full of dead Santas was
Yeah,
fantastic.
that was so funny. I think that I struggled to stay focused because Julian was not interesting to me as a villain.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that there was something to be said as they delved into the concept of domestic violence, of toxic relationships, um, and of Julian's treatment of Lily, of his treatment of Valerie, and the whole dysfunctional siphon heretic family. But I didn't find Julian very compelling because he again was, to me, another pseudo Klaus. Like we're still going for this grandiose, uh, like a grandstanding kind of villain who like, mouths off all these one-liners
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. Like it wasn't very compelling to me, so it was hard for me to get into the episode because it didn't feel very Christmassy, which I guess is because they still have to do plot. Like they can't just do Christmas, and that's a bit of a spoiler for my final pitch here in this episode. But
More
how did you
Christmas.
feel?
Yeah.
Yeah, how did you feel about this episode?
Yeah, I didn't really care about what was happening with Julian. Besides the scene with the dead Santas, one thing that kind of stood out to me was like Nora and Bonnie did have a conversation about uh, Nora was talking about Mary Louise, and it was very sweet how she said it feels good to have someone who doesn't need you but who loves you and wants your company regardless.
Mm,
And all that was kind of juxtaposed with people calling Bonnie, asking her for advice. With was it in
yes.
this episode or in
Yes, that was
the
this one. It
next?
felt very self-aware, like of the
Yeah,
show.
and but I'm like, why would you mention that? Why would you? I don't know. Why would you put your own shortcomings on the spotlight like that? That
Mm.
was pretty weird to me.
Yeah, I think that I believe season 7 ends like it ends up being Bonnie is the big bad essentially. Like she is the hunter that's driven um to hunt
Mm.
down vampires and is trying to put them all in the soul stone and stuff like that. And so I guess I kind of wonder if maybe it's about going down that road, is that like causing friction between the friends as a contributing factor to this idea that she's going to be the kind of main villain. Obviously, they help her and they still care about her and they bring her back from that, but that she's going to become villainous in some way. And from what I recall, Enzo was really the only one that was on her side for that process. But
Mm-hmm.
I can't really like speak to that because I haven't rewatched it. But but yeah, I think that it's interesting that this idea that it's like a character telling her that she doesn't that it's nice to have somebody just love you because not because they need you, is coming up in the context of the season where Bonnie goes dark side essentially. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's kind of funny. Did you have anything else on the season 7 side of things?
Let me think. No, I don't think so. I think for that episode, that's it.
Okay, so I guess we now have the very final Christmas episode they ever did on this series.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the summary on the wiki reads: faced with the fallout from his interaction with Cade, Stefan is determined to have one thing go right: Christmas Eve with Caroline. However, when Damon and Sybil crash their Christmas Eve dinner, which had been joined by Alaric, Matt, and Peter, things quickly take a dark and twisted turn. Meanwhile, in a series of flashbacks to Stefan's past, Cade's attempt to entice him with his mysterious agenda leaves Stefan faced with an unimaginable decision. Bonnie and Enzo also appear. So I don't know if
They
it
just
was
also
written out.
appear.
Yeah,
They
they
just
just also
appear.
appear. I
They're
mean,
there too.
yeah, they are. They are there. How did you feel about this particular episode, Ingrid?
I felt that this one was sufficiently Christmassy because there was a lot of focus in this Christmas dinner that Caroline was planning and that Stefan didn't really get to be a part of. But it was fun to see Caroline like obsess over something, over like a party, an event,
Mm.
festivities. So that was pretty interesting. The way it was sort of subverted and Damon turned it into like, I'm going to choose one of you to murder was interesting. I actually kind of liked it.
Mm.
I had forgotten about Matt's dad.
Yeah, me
He's back.
too.
So it's I don't know if it's the first time, but it's not the first time, but it's one of the few times where someone's father is like has a significant ish part of their storyline. So it's
Mm.
the dad that's in peril here, not the mom. So
Yeah, I think that the episode worked for me because it had several things that it was anticipating. Like, as a viewer, you know that several things are going to happen. Like, Stefan is preparing to leave Caroline, and Damon's going to kill someone, and it builds that anticipation in a really interesting way. I think that sometimes the Vampire Diaries and just shows in general that have as many twists as it does, they can start to feel arbitrary. But when you know, when there's a sense of inevitability about something, that brings back um, the tension in a more interesting way. And this was, to me, this was the most Christmassy one. And it's probably the one that's most similar to what my final pitch is for a Christmas
mm,
episode, because it was. I like people being trapped in a space together. I like people being like stuck in an awkward or difficult situation. Um, and I think Christmas does that. Like Christmas does that. So I felt like this one was the most, and I liked that it opened with the flashback to Monterey, and those kids thought that that Stefan the Ripper was Santa. That's
yeah,
terrible.
that was pretty awful. It was funny though. I shouldn't have laughed,
Yeah.
but I did. Uh,
Also, you may not have noticed this, but the amount in the like montage of Stefan dressing up the house, the amount of lights he puts on that tree is definitely a fire hazard. It's so bad. It's like mostly
I
lights. You
didn't
can
notice.
barely see the tree.
My favorite part of the episode was Damon stabbing Stefan with the star from the tree,
Yes.
the wooden star. I
Yeah.
thought that was like a nice touch. That was so good.
Yes.
I don't even know why, but it was just like Christmas and
Uh,
murder. It's perfect.
Yeah, I liked Bonnie and Enzo's gift exchange, where he gave
Oh,
her a
that
trip
was
to
cute too.
Paris and she gave him t-shirts and she felt bad
T-shirts, yeah,
about it. And he's
that
like,
was pretty cute.
whatever, like, it's fine. Oh, that's
Oh, they
so
were pretty
good.
cute.
They were so good. I don't know why he had to die. Like, it just makes me angry all over again. I can't get into it. I can't talk about
Mhm. At least not
it.
today.
Yeah, at least not today. Um, how do we feel, by the way, about Matt's dad? Like, how do we feel about him as a character and like what he achieved in the final season?
Um, I think it was an attempt to give Matt a storyline and to give him a bit more depth that I think could have been handled in a better or a different way. Like, I don't think it would have been necessary to bring back his dad. So
Mm.
I'm glad that he was. No, am I glad? Uh, I don't know. I'm feeling a bit ambivalent towards him, towards that whole
Mm.
thing. Well, how do you
Yeah,
feel?
I think that in general, am not of the camp that abusive or neglectful parents can just show up when you're an adult and mend
Mm-hmm.
fences. Like, obviously, different people have different metrics for how that what they would accept and how they would engage with a parent like that as an adult. But the fact that so much happens to Matt and his dad isn't there for any of that. He's not
Mm-hmm.
there when his fiance dies. He's not there when Vicky dies. He's not there when Matt graduates. And then, of course, isn't there for all of the things in between that happen that are supernatural in nature and terrifying and traumatizing for Matt that aren't
Mm-hmm.
big life events. But it's just, yeah, it bothers me that all of a sudden we're supposed to care about this guy. Like no, fuck you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe if it had been Kelly, it would have been better because at least she was part of some of that. Like she was part of she was there when Vicky died, and I guess because the fact that she was neglectful stems from mostly from her like alcohol abuse and things like
Mm,
that. To see her try to remedy that would have been better than to just throw this guy who abandoned them all like for no real reason. So
yeah.
I
Well,
guess
she
I don't
does.
know.
I think she does come back in the final season. And I think at that point she's been killed by Cade and is like under his control in some way. I
Mm,
believe it's been quite a while since I watched it, but I
mm,
felt that her return was quite different to the way that Matt's dad was allowed to return, and maybe that was from a like kind of clean slate approach. Like we never saw Matt's dad acting abusively or neglectfully; he just wasn't there, which is acting neglectfully. But
mm.
uh, yeah, her return wasn't. Like I mean, and then we also see Vicky again. Like, like we do get the family reunion in this season, but it's really not yeah, I don't know. It just pissed me off seeing so much of
Hmm.
Matt's dad. Like,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. Did you have anything else written down on that bummer note? Did you have anything else written down for this one?
No, that's all I got. The what I wrote down for this episode was the star. Uh,
Yeah.
that's it. That's all I wrote.
That's what matters to us is the dead Santas in the bar and the star
Yeah,
stabbing Damon.
exactly. Hmm.
Okay, so did you have anything that you feel that a Christmas episode should have, like what it should represent and how it should act in the overall show?
I think that there should have been more of a focus on getting everybody together to spend
Mm,
Christmas. Like Caroline and Elena do mention this. Like we've never spent a Christmas apart, and
mm,
then Bonnie is gone. So I think that it would have been interesting to keep that as if it were like a really important Christmas tradition between this group of friends to always spend Christmas together. And every episode is just them trying to, I don't know, maneuver around the events in their life to have this moment together,
mm,
this Christmas moment together. So, like, I don't know, I just wanted the Christmas dinner, but every episode and with all of them, not like just like a Caroline
mm.
Stefan thing. I wanted it to be more all
Yeah.
encompassing, I guess.
Yeah. What I have written down for my pitch is I want Christmas episodes to be a bottle episode. So like where they're essentially trapped somewhere in something like a bottle episode in the sense that it's sometimes something that shows just do to save money because you just do it on the same set with all the
Mm-hmm.
same people. But they're just like stuck in one place and they can't leave. It's like I guess your idea of the choice involved of like we have to get together, we choose to do this every year, you have to show up, you have to do this, like you try to get everyone together, um, is like super compelling and interesting. And I've essentially gone in the opposite direction, which is that they're kind of like trapped in the sense, not in a
Stuck.
supernatural, not trapped in a supernatural sense, but like there's something socially awkward that means that they all have to be together. Like there's a Christmas wedding or a Christmas baby or somebody's sick or something like that, and they are all like they have to be there together, even though a lot of them because at any given point in the show they aren't all getting along. Like somebody's got some
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
massive grudge against somebody else, so like they're all kind of stuck together, and maybe there's a B plot where they think that there's something supernatural happening, but then it turns out that there isn't, and they still have to just do Christmas even though they didn't want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that I guess we could do both. Where in the seasons where they get along a bit more, it's to maintain the Christmas tradition. But then in the seasons where they don't, we just force them together. And then by
Mm.
the end, I guess that could be like this is going to get like sappy and Christmas miracle
Mm.
type situation. But like they start to get along again by the end of it, like or at least have a truce within that moment because they're stuck together for some reason. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would be nice. I think it's tough. It would be tough to try and theorize a Christmas episode for a show like this. Like in the real world, in a real writer's room, it would be very, very tough to do that because I think that you would have the plot that you already have going kind of up in the air. So you have to kind of keep that progressing because you don't want the audience to feel like everything's on pause. Even though
Mhm.
I think that it's fun and funny when everything's on pause and when that's even like frustrating for the characters. Like, don't you know what we have going on? Don't you know what we have to be dealing with right now?
Yes,
And it's
like
like,
I love filler
I know, but
episodes.
make
Like,
this garland.
mhm.
Yeah. Filler episodes are excellent. So that's something that I would want, kind of like a meta filler episode where they kind of force themselves. They
Mhm.
kind of have an awareness that no, we have to like fill in this time in a very specific way. We can't just keep like fucking around with our supernatural drama.
Mhm.
So that's my pitch.
And
Forced
that
joy.
was yeah, forced joy.
Yeah.
My pitch is kind of forced joy, but they are the ones forcing the joy. Like, well, no, we have to be
Yeah.
happy. We have to be
Yes.
together, even though everything's going to shit.
Yeah. This sense that they're traveling from one Christmas to another. Like terrible things are going to happen before next Christmas, so you need to come here for this Christmas. Like
Mhm.
um that's it's very depressing, but I don't know how to do a Christmas themed anything that isn't depressing in this world because so many people have lost so much of their families. Like, it would be so hard. So
Yeah, I don't think it's possible, honestly.
yeah, yeah. Um, you know what would be hard is a show about Christmas that occasionally has a vampire episode.
I don't think that would be hard. I
You
think that
don't
would
think that would be
be.
hard?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like, we can take Santa and all of the lore surrounding Christmas and just add vampires, and it would be. I think it would work. I
Yeah,
think that could be our next podcast.
yeah. So it's like
Another
the
writer's
show
room.
is all about Christmas, and very rarely, like once a season, there's a vampire episode.
There's a vampire. Yeah. Mhm.
Ah, okay. Well, on that note, I think we're probably done with that
I,
incredible idea.
I think so.
Was
I
there
think
anything else you wanted to add? No.
no, I'm good. I think that we've kind of shifted in a different direction that I would love to pursue, but maybe not tonight. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So thank you so much for hanging out and talking Christmas nonsense with me, Ingrid.
Uh, you're welcome, and thank you. I'm always glad for the opportunity to talk about nonsense, and in particular, Christmas nonsense. So, thank you so much, Flo. And happy holidays to everyone listening.
Yes. Happy holidays.